Hey, everyone. I'm Summer. Welcome to my channel. Today I will share the process of rendering and coloring the skin and hair of the characters in this illustration. The process of rendering and refinement is rather lengthy and takes a long time. This video was played at 3x speed. I checked the speed. The process of selecting colors and setting layers throughout the process was quite clear and should not affect everyone's viewing. This picture of mine is somewhat different from the previous ones. The characters I drew before were basically under normal lighting, parallel light effects. For this picture, I tried the effect of light spots. There will be some differences in the handling of light and shadow, and this is also the challenge of this picture. My method may not be completely accurate. There might be more convenient drawing methods. But I also hope this video can be helpful to you who want to learn digital painting skills. So let's start enjoying the wonderful painting process. The complete drawing process can be seen in my previous video. When I was designing the color sketch for this picture, I had already done simple lighting and shadow. At that time, I just wanted to take a look at the overall effect and decide whether to choose this direction to advance. When rendering, I thought the initial effect was quite good. So, I carried out the next step of processing on the dark layer of the sketch previously, in order to get the effect quickly. I used the overlay layer of the main film to design the light and shadow for the entire character as a layer group. At the beginning of the rendering, I thought of directly using the overlay layer of the main film for modification and refinement. This would be very fast. However, considering the differences in the base colors of different areas, it would be rather troublesome to make adjustments. Therefore, I still performed partition block rendering for different areas. I still started the rendering from the skin part. For the first layer of the dark surface of the skin part, I still used the overlay layer of the positive film. I kept the color used in the sketch, but supplemented the dark areas of the skin on the basis of the sketch. I added a softer transition to the parts like the arms, chest, and legs that had a distinct round feeling, and added the dark areas that were not drawn in the sketch. When drawing the skin, it is important to note that the edges of the dark projections and the turning surfaces of the shapes are handled differently. The edges of the projections should be drawn clearly with a hard-edged brush, while the turning surfaces of the shapes need to be transited smoothly and naturally with a soft-edged brush or a smudge tool. Only in this way can the soft feeling of the skin be expressed. Because I want to create a light spot effect, a large part of the character will be in the shadow to produce the light spot effect. Therefore, when choosing the background color of the character's skin and drawing the dark areas, the color lightness is relatively lower than that of the flat light effect. After the first layer of dark areas was drawn, a new normal layer was used to draw the second layer of dark areas with a lower brightness color. I mainly drew the closed shadows and the turning points of key structures. For instance, I strengthened the key points of the fingers in this part, aiming to make the key structures more prominent. The area to be drawn on this layer should not be too large. The shaded and blocked parts should be represented by small triangular sections. There is a lot of green in the background. Although green is a neutral color, it still has a cool color tilt for warm-toned skin. I used a normal layer to add some low saturation blue in the dark areas of the skin as a reflection. Although I used blue, the color painted on the skin is very light. When the blue and the base color of the skin are superimposed, the color saturation will be lower, making people feel that they are blue. But in fact, the color of these areas is still in the red series. It's just that, due to the contrast relationship of the colors, the eyes create an illusion, which is also a very interesting visual illusion phenomenon. To make the skin look more rosy, I used a new overlay layer to draw a small area of orange-red line at the edge of the projection. In this way, when the picture is enlarged, there will be a very thin red line at the edge of the projection, making the skin look more rosy and very thin. For the illuminated area, I didn't use the layer of the grass drawing. Instead, I created a new normal layer to draw the shape of the illuminated area. I think this way it can be drawn more clearly. The nose and face areas are the key points of processing. Using the shape of the illuminated surface can set off the structure of the nose and eye sockets. For the illuminated part, I chose a yellow color with relatively high brightness and low saturation. I used the hard, edged, round-tipped brush in combination with a smudging tool. The hard-edged brush was used to draw the shape of the area, and the smudging tool was used to transition the hard edges gently in the eye sockets and cheekbones. This way, the bridge of the nose is firm and the cheeks are round. The illuminated area on the cheeks is also drawn in the same way. The other light spots on the face can clearly draw the shape of the illuminated area. I usually draw the edges of the small light spots clearly, and the larger parts will be combined with the facial structure to add transitions. The light-receiving areas of other parts of the body are also drawn in the same way. characters can add some simple makeup. Usually, some blush is added to the cheekbones, and a little eyeshadow is added to the outer corners of the eyes. This can also make the skin look more rosy. However, these colors should not be too intense. Pay attention to the choice of color saturation. The saturation should be a little higher than the skin base color, otherwise, it will look very strange. Don't forget to draw the volume of the whites of the eyes. The upper eyelid has a projection on the eyeball, and this part should also be drawn. For the iris part, I will also draw the projection of the upper eyelid first. The size and shape of the pupil can be adjusted at this stage. Some small details can be added around the pupil, and more color variations and detail changes can also be added to the iris. The amount of details added depends on the size of the eye area. If the picture is mainly a head portrait and the eye area is large, then more layers of changes need to be added to the iris area. If the character is a full-length portrait, the area occupied by the eyes in the picture is very small. It is sufficient to draw the overall relationship. If too many details are drawn, it will instead affect the effect of the picture. Some secondary highlights in the dark areas of the eyes can be added, and the colors can be brighter. This can also increase the color variation of the eyes. To make your eyes brighter, you can use a superimposed layer to brighten the illuminated part of your eyes and darken the upper eyelid projection. However, pay attention to whether the contrast between light and dark in your eyes is consistent with the overall effect of the picture. It's best to draw in separate layers so that you can make adjustments at any time. After the drawing is completed, you can add some coloring to the line drawing part, mainly adding some dark red at the inner and outer corners of the eyes. For the lines of the double eyelids, you can use the color of the darker parts of the skin to color them so that the eyes will look more natural. The highlights of the eyes should not be drawn too large. You can use high brightness colors to add some small bright spots. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle. You can also draw an ellipse or a line shape. Use a simple color layer to initially enhance the illuminated part of the skin, making the light spot visible. The opacity of the main brush should be lower, and the color needs to have some color tendency. The color lightening layer is easy to expose and transition. Pay attention to the color and the force of your hand. of the lips should be drawn a bit blurrier to look more natural. The highlights should not be drawn too strongly either. Pay attention to judging the light exposure of the mouth. The position of my mouth was not very comfortable. I adjusted the position of my mouth again. For the hair, I still found the dark layer from the initial sketch stage and adjusted the color based on the sketch. I made the color a little warmer. Most of the hair is in the dark areas of the design, so I used the color of the dark parts of the hair to create a gradient at the bottom and the back of the hair. This can quickly increase the volume and layers of the head. I used a hard-edged brush to draw the dark areas of the hair groups. I treated the shape of the ponytail as a cylinder to handle the overall relationship and then added more small layering variations. It can be used in conjunction with a sharp-angled eraser to erase minor changes in the hair strands and illuminated areas. Use a new normal layer and select a color that is a little darker than the dark area to draw the second layer of shadow for the hair. I drew the gap between the closed shadow and the dark area of the hair, which can give the dark area more layers and details. The structure behind the character and at the end of the hair can be appropriately simplified. Weakening these parts is also reducing the density of details. In this way, the picture will have more contrast in the density of details, and the character's head can stand out more. volume and the contrast between light and dark are not sufficient. You can darken the color in the closed shadow area again, or draw with a new dark color. That's exactly what I did. Use a new normal layer to draw the highlights of the hair. The highlights should be drawn in an arc shape because the top of the head is spherical. After drawing the arc, use an eraser to distinguish the boundaries between the hair strands and the small hair groups. This way, the hair will look more natural. The highlights can add more color variations. I superimposed colors on the highlight parts with different colors on the highlight layer. Reducing the size of the picture doesn't have much effect, but when zooming in, faint color changes can be seen in the highlights. Illuminated parts of the hair can also be brightened with a color lightening layer, especially the areas with light spots. to add a little low saturation blue to the areas further back and lower of the hair. The front-back relationship between the hair and the human body can be well distinguished. That's all for today's sharing. I hope everyone can feel the joy of painting during the process. I will bring you more wonderful content. Stay tuned.